Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the singing of our national anthem, performed this morning by members of the United States Air Force Academy's Cadet Chorale.
See by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Welcome to the annual National Character and Leadership Symposium. The National Character and Leadership Symposium, or NCLS, is the United States Air Force Academy's flagship event on character and leadership. It brings together distinguished scholars, military leaders, corporate executives, and world-class athletes to motivate and equip participants for honorable living and effective leadership. This two-day symposium provides an opportunity for all Academy personnel, visiting university students, faculty, and community members to experience dynamic speakers and take part in group discussions to enhance their own understanding of the importance of sound moral character and good leadership.
Welcome to the United States Air Force Academy and our 26th Annual National Character and Leadership Symposium. I am Cadet First Class Marissa Jacobs-Hoffman, the Deputy Cadet in charge of this year's symposium, and your MC for this morning's opening ceremony. We are very excited to have you here at the Air Force Academy for the National Character and Leadership Symposium. The United States Air Force Academy is unique for many reasons, but what truly sets us apart is that we are held accountable for producing leaders of character, who are ready to serve their country by living honorably, lifting others, and elevating performance. We do this through a broad, 4-year, intentional course of instruction that gives cadets the tools and practice to lead at the personal, interpersonal, team, and organizational level. Each year, our institution takes pause to engage in meaningful dialogue relating to cadet outcomes, and we invite distinguished civilian and military leaders from diverse backgrounds and experiences to help facilitate these discussions. This year's NCLS theme is Leadership, Teamwork, and Organizational Management. You will hear incredible stories of triumph, overcoming adversity, and breaking down barriers. Through these sessions, will certainly be entertaining, the next 2 days are really a call to action. With this in mind, I challenge each of you to take this opportunity to critically analyze what it takes to lead in the 21st century. Will members of the following groups please stand and be recognized, as their generous donations have made NCLS possible. The United States Air Force Academy, Class of 1959. Our flagship supporter, the Class of 1973. The Class of 1974. And the Class of 1993. The Association of Graduates. The United States Air Force Academy Endowment. The Falcon Foundation. And the John and Lynn Muse Educational Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Stephen W. Wilson. General Wilson received his commission from Texas A&M in 1981. He has served multiple flying tours and led bomber, intelligence, surveillance reconnaissance, mobility, aeromedical evacuation, and airborne command during Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, and Combined Joint Task Force Horn of Africa. He has also commanded the Joint Functional Component for Global Strike Command and Air Force Global Strike Command, and the Deputy Commander of the U.S. Strategic Command. He is a command pilot with more than 4,500 flying hours and 680 combat flying hours. Ladies and gentlemen, General Stephen Wilson.
Well, good morning. Amen. What a place to be. The Arnold Hall at the United States Air Force Academy for the National Character Leadership Symposium. It's made world-class because of all of you. A room full of selfless protectors, teachers, preachers, healers, builders, military and civilian, all teammates. First and foremost, why don't we all have you give yourselves a round of applause for getting into the ring to grow as a team, to lead each other in this country. So to you all for the ring. I'd also like, maybe you could give me a round of applause for being smart enough to open this symposium instead of talking after Chief Master Sergeant Wright. Following Chief Wright is like following Beyonce after a concert, and that's just not what you want to do. But it's a real privilege to be here. We have a tremendous opportunity over these next 2 days to take time to think deeply, critically, creatively, and collaboratively. It's an opportunity to guide who we want to be and really who this country needs us to be for the future. I'll spend the balance of my time talking about 3 things that can help us think through that. Why, what, and who. And I'll submit that if in every leadership and fellowship capacity you study those things, you can best apply and learn from this leadership symposium. So if Simon Sinek were here, he'd wisely ask, what's our why? Why are you and I aiming to solidify our character and our leadership? Matters of faith, family, or personal goals likely play a part for each of us. But I contend our why converges in one common area. It's in the title of our symposium. We're here for the nation. The reality is today, the survival and the prosperity of America can't be taken for granted. We're here to evolve the character and the leadership that preserves this great nation. Our national security and our defense strategies have made clear that great power competition is here to stay. Now, I'll defer many elements of that competition to better placed teammates, but a couple of things stand out to me militarily. China has risen and Russia has reemerged. They have regional and global plans, goals to reshape the world in their light, a light that contrasts with liberty as we know it. We spend a lot of time in the Pentagon assessing those things. One, if we look at China and Russia, they've built arsenals that are lethal, in many ways on par with our own, and when they're not, they have built momentum to soon equal and maybe even surpass us in areas. Two, they've studied our tactics on full display for 28 years in the Middle East, and they've built well-prepared counters. Three, their system of government, really their system of values, are different. In this age of massive disruption that is derived by speed of technology and change, they are more nimble because their attempts at fairness and balance are not always their North Star. International agreements, intellectual property rights, personal privacy, ethics are not always their concern. They have strategic goals to supplant America in power and influence, and they've been meeting those goals year after year. China, in particular, brings resources that parallel or exceed our own. Economic parity, rapid growth, and 8 times the STEM graduates that they produce every year. I'll say that again. 8x the number of STEM graduates is what China is producing every year. We're going to hear Brene Brown later today, and she's simply incredible. One tenet that she conveys that has stuck with me is the importance of embracing vulnerability in leadership. And with that in mind, I'll share that I sometimes feel pretty anxious. This renewed competition has me concerned. It has me concerned about what the future holds. The threat from this level of competition is real, and I sometimes wonder if we can rise to it again. And this time, do we need to take on the role of David instead of Goliath? And if we do, can we remain true to our values that have shaped the leadership and character and the world? Can we uphold what Secretary Mattis would summarize as, we're not the perfect guys, but we are the good guys? I'm not sure, but the more I've studied those questions, the more I've taken an unapologetically optimistic view. We can and we will. My optimism stems from you all here, from the values that you represent while entering into the ring under your own free will. Well, free except for some of the cadets here. You all have been ordered here, and I'm just hoping you don't fall asleep. But my unbridled optimism also stems from the strong shoulders of yesterday and the shoulders that we stand on that'll help us reach tomorrow. This year marks the 50th anniversary of what may be the seminal moment of human history. It's the best example that I know that shows what we together can accomplish. The level of improbable that became possible against even the most difficult odds. 50 years ago, 3 Americans, 2 of them Air Force airmen, Mike Collins and Buzz Aldrin, with Neil Armstrong, piloted a spacecraft 250,000 miles to the moon. There on July 20th, 1969, Neil and Buzz took giant leaps that etched their names into mankind's history books for eternity. Going to the moon, landing, and coming back was improbable for many reasons, technology being core. Instead of supercomputers and 5G networks and iPhones, they used chalkboards and slide rules. The world was awash in change back then. a generation adjusting to the aftermath of World War II, while also facing a rising Soviet Union, a hegemonic power with a different view of the future. The industrial, electrical, and early computing revolutions were underpinning uber disruption that was spanning political, economic, social, and technological factors. Those factors were combining to provide a collision between fear and hope, creating uncertainty. There was also brutal combat underway. It was somewhere over there in Vietnam. Meanwhile, a myriad of battles were underway here at home, worthy but tragic battles to propel an ever-improving society. Does all of that sound eerily familiar? Yet, even amidst all of that, Neil and Buzz, two Americans, still jumped off a ladder onto the surface of a celestial planet 250,000 miles away. Was it a matter of divine providence? Perhaps. Was it a matter of luck? Perhaps that too. More than that, though, I contend the improbable became possible because it was a matter of who. And the who then, like now, is you. Ordinary people, American citizens who wanted to contribute, who wanted to make a difference. Our nation's success in areas of disruption and competition like this stem from our values, from our people, from all of you here. It stems from you being willing and free to follow shared values instead of instructions. It stems from you leading each step with tenacious independence and creativity. It's the secret sauce in the American experiment. Creativity and contribution by anyone and everyone, not just those in the tower. Creativity and contribution that aggregate to make the near impossible possible. Now, I've been lucky to speak to Buzz Aldrin. He emphatically states they didn't get to the moon without the entire country. Like all of us here, teachers, preachers, healers, builders, protectors, selfless and bonded in inspiration and aspiration. What I've learned from talking to heroes like him is that history often focuses on their greatness as if they are unique and unmatchable. And I believe while we celebrate our heroes, we must not hold them so high that we cannot see ourselves filling their shoes and stepping up when it's called upon. From less visible to visible ways, you all can fill their shoes. You can. There's really just a few simple things that we must do. One, we must always lead, regardless of position, by example. Does anyone know what the newspaper headline would have read on February 21st, 1962, 57 years ago today? The afternoon prior, John Glenn splashed down safely in the Mercury space capsule, Friendship 7. He was the first American to orbit the Earth. Rewind several months and you would have found him staring at trajectory equations as he made new teammates, new friends at NASA. Some of those teammates were called computers because of their math wizardry. Supercomputers were just about to take hold, but they weren't trusted yet. Some of those teammates were women, including African American women. While many others limited their participation in conversation, Glenn held true to right, true to teamwork and trust. He led by example with all, and one in particular, Katherine Johnson. And you all probably know the rest of the story. Friendship 7 was not going to launch per Glenn's request until Catherine was given time to validate the trajectory numbers from the new supercomputers. And she nailed it. And Friendship 7 was a success, galvanizing a country to head to the moon. What's notable wasn't just the belief Glenn had in Catherine, but it was the way it occurred, how his actions became an example for the entire team, a team that grew from the example to find success in the face of some very difficult odds. We're all capable of emulating that by leading by example. 2, always be prepared. To be clear, Katherine Johnson's story deserves its own light, and many of you have seen the movie or read the book. From racial to gender divides, she broke barriers time and time again. But something else tangible to all here is she was ready when it counted. Leading and following, accountability, teamwork, culture, it's all built upon trust. And you have to be prepared to maintain the trust of others. And Catherine was. Now, there are countless examples of this for all of us to learn about, but another story I'm inspired about is the Doolittle Raiders. And I'll save the bulk of the story for now, beyond saying 80 Americans, led by the one and only Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle, changed the belief of America and the course of the war in the Pacific on April 18th, 1942. Dick Cole, 103 years old today, the last remaining Doolittle Raider. For those that have met him, he's amazing. He's simply remarkable. He was a lieutenant at the time and drew the assignment really by happenstance to be Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot on that mission. And I had the pleasure of asking him about that, about climbing into the B-25 on the Hornet that morning, knowing it was a one-way ride. I asked him what was going through his mind. And you know what he said? Quote, "I was thinking, please don't screw up the pre-flight checklist." Well, that's a vote for being prepared. But if you think about it, there's a little bit more to that under the hood. A young lieutenant no older than many in this room, he wasn't nervous, despite it being the response to Pearl Harbor, despite sitting next to the Jimmy Doolittle. The moment wasn't too big because he was prepared and he was focused on doing his job. And that comes from trust. And I don't know about you, but I strive each and every day to try and create that trust in my teams, just like Jimmy Doolittle did back then. 3, there's a Latin saying, "Adentis fortuna juvat." Fortune favors the bold. Jump to the mid-70s with me for a brief final example. A historic figure named Kelly Johnson had just semi-retired from Lockheed's Skunk Works. The best of the best worked there. They were the ones developing the technology that helped America win the Cold War, technology like the SR-71. Kelly was the Lockheed patriarch. Ben Rich replaced him. Ben encouraged new research and new ideas. One of his new ideas was stealth. A radar specialist named Denny Overholzer, in his spare time researching, found a paper by, of all things, a Soviet scientist. The scientists had ignored the paper, but it contained the radar equations that could help build a truly stealth aircraft. Denny presented that to Ben. Ben offers it to Kelly, who was still advising Lockheed as a mentor at the time. Kelly hated it. He thought it was a fool's errand. But Ben knew it was not without science. It was bold, but measured. He overruled his mentor and persevered. They came to the Air Force leaders and demonstrated and the rest is history, because America's security has been better for it, stealth, ever since. The lesson: be bold. Enable environments that harness our natural American values of individual creativity and thought. Environments that encourage Denny to bring the measured research to Bend. The lessons are many. The point is these gifts are not gifted traits. You're empowered. You have the tools and the voice. Spend these 2 days learning how to apply them. Aim to not only match, but to exceed these examples. I'll leave you all with this. Great power competition requires a whole-of-nation effort. That means each of us, all of you, me, committed every single day, leading something, small or big, but something daily that makes this nation a little bit better. For all of our reasons, that's our common why. We live in a society where we're able to maximize all positive aspects and methods of leading, teaming, culture, and character. Harnessing but not constraining, making the improbable possible. That's our common what. And finally, the who. The who is you. Winning leadership doesn't take magic. It's not handed to certain people at birth. It only takes a commitment to lead by example, like John Glenn and Jimmy Doolittle. It calls for a desire to be prepared and ready to build trust, like Dick Cole and Katherine Johnson. And it's done best with measured boldness, enabling the creativity and inputs of others to leap with you, like Ben Rich and Denny Overholser. I told you at the beginning that I felt some anxiety. There is no doubt significant disruption going on in the world right now, politically, economically, socially, technologically. Our competitors at this very moment are planning for ways to change the current world order. But when I talk to airmen, when I talk to civilian teammates, when I talk to leaders and patriots like you, I become unapologetically optimistic. America's in great hands. United behind why, focused on what, and led by you. Today is where preparation meets opportunity. The only question that remains is, if not now, when? If not us, who? I want to win. I want you to join us. Aim high, Airmen. Thank you.
Thank you, General Wilson. I encourage you to hear the calls to strengthen and challenge yourself over the next 2 days and to respond in action. Take advantage of this unique opportunity. This is going to be an incredible event. Now please, go enjoy your time here at the United States Air Force Academy and the 26th Annual National Character and Leadership Symposium. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a reminder that the first session will begin shortly in this auditorium, and thank you for joining us this morning.